enforcement officials who are dealing with this stuff every single day can come to some basic consensus in terms of steps that we need to take, Congress is going to be paying attention to them, and we'll be able to make progress.
President Obama, just before today's White House meeting on guns, joining me to talk about that is Dana Loesch, the host of The Dana Show, and Charles Blow, a New York Times columnist and CNN contributor. I'm also bringing back the former Congressman Stephen Latterak. Stephen, you were about to make a point about the Second Amendment, and in the interest of fair play, I'd like you to make that point.
That's nice of you. What I was saying is that, you know, the Second Amendment's been interpreted by the Supreme Court recently in a Washington, D.C. case, Heller, and another case in Chicago, looking at gun regulations. And you can't frame the argument, why do you need that gun? That's not the issue. The issue is that the Second Amendment says you're entitled to have that gun. It also, the courts have said that you can put reasonable restrictions on that. And this is a political problem that we're facing. And so people can take the extreme views on this issue and get nothing done. Or you can say, how can we come together and close the gun show loophole and do more background checks and deal with people with mental illness? I get that point. Well, I don't disagree with that second point that you made there. But on the question of the Second Amendment, I got into this with Newt Gingrich the other day. Presumably, I mean, do you agree or disagree with the ban on machine guns, for example, automatic machine guns? Well, that's a reasonable restriction. That's what I'm saying. But you can't. The reason that gun sales go up.
Yeah, right, but my question is, since the Founding Fathers never specified, obviously, the precise type of gun, because they couldn't have done, they wouldn't have been able to foresee them. Right. My question to you is, what is the substantive difference between the effect of a banned machine gun that you and I both agree should be banned under the Second Amendment? Right. What is the difference between that and what it can do to a classroom full of children and an AR-15 loaded with a 100-bullet magazine? Because to me, I don't see any difference, and that's why I don't understand why you're comfortable with banning one but not the other.
Well, it's not a question of what I'm comfortable. I mean, the Founding Fathers didn't foresee texting while driving either, but that isn't how we measure things. The fact of the matter is that the recent interpretations of the Second Amendment say that you're allowed to have a gun. And what you have to do then say is, what can we do within the political framework, the fractured political framework, where Republicans control the House, the Democrats control the White House and the Senate? What can you get done?
I get that. Yeah.
Well, so that's what this is about.
I get that, except that I just think that it should also include an assault weapons ban, and I'm interested in exploring the debates on both sides about that. Charles Blow, sure. I mean, this is the contradiction that I can't quite work out in my head with the pro-gun lobby, if you like. Let's call them that, even though I'm not anti-all-gun. It's a pointless phrase in many ways. But what is the difference between agreeing that under the Second Amendment you can't own a machine gun because it causes mass carnage in a few seconds, but you can apparently, as a right, have an AR-15 with a 100-bullet magazine? Can you explain to me the argument, the logic that differentiates those two in terms of the carnage they can both cause?
You can't ask me to explain the logic of differentiating because I don't quite understand the logic of those. I do believe that we can start by saying that high-capacity magazines are probably not things that we should have in civilian hands. I think that we can say that weapons like these, assault weapons, assault rifles, both, but I think also some assault handguns can be placed out of bounds of ordinary citizens, and I think that that's okay and still within the Second Amendment and does not violate the spirit of that amendment.
Okay, Dana Loesch, I mean, I spoke to Ray Kelly actually off camera at the end of that to try and just, because I knew that you and I have locked horns about this before, and I said, explain to me the difference between an AR-15 in reality and some of the more high-powered handguns. And he said, look, if you get a 30-bullet magazine clipped to a high-powered handgun, it can obviously fire at rapid rate, and everyone concedes that. The difference with an AR-15 is that the way that you hold it and the way that you load the magazines makes it a much easier weapon to commit mass slaughter with and a much faster one to commit it with. So he said there is a substantive difference. But I ask you the same question I've asked others, which is, what is the difference in terms of the argument that you're putting forward to me about your resistance to ban an AR-15 style weapon? What is the difference between the kind of carnage it can cause in a school and a machine gun, an automatic rifle, which is already banned in most places? What's the difference?
Well, an AR-15 is semi-automatic, Piers, and a machine gun is obviously automatic. So one is select fire, the other, or one may have select fire capabilities. The other one, you with one pull a trigger once and you get one bullet. There's a huge difference. And I want to make a note about the magazine.
But that wasn't
size
my
as well.
question.
People
That wasn't
need
my
to
question. My
realize.
question was in terms.
Well, no,
my
I
question
explained
was
the
in terms
difference
of
to
the
you.
ability.
You asked what the difference was.
Well, no, but I know the technical differences. I'm asking about the effect if a man like James Holmes walks into a movie theatre armed with, as he had, a 100-bullet magazine and an AR-15 and begins to unload. What is the difference in the carnage that he can cause in a minute compared to a machine gun? Now, the only answer is a few more dead, right? Because he still managed to hit 70 people.
Well, we had the Virginia Tech shooting, which was done with handguns. By the way, I've never heard the term assault handgun before. But that Virginia Tech, that was the single deadliest shooting in the history of this country, and that was done with handguns. But if you're trying to somehow equate AR-15s with machine guns, the two are completely different. The AR-15 is the civilian version of the M16, and in fact, I asked your producers about this, Piers. I wanted to show you something. This is actually a small size of a small size AR-15, and in fact, if you would believe it, I got this at the gas station. It is a lighter that's probably not going. Oh, there it goes. It's not going to work. But see, the difference between a fully automatic, an M16, which is the military style, is that you hold the trigger. Imagine this is me holding the trigger. The ammunition, the rounds keep coming. But with a semi-automatic, you have to, with one pull of the trigger, one pull, one bullet every single time. That's the difference. And you're conflating these terms, though. And I want to make another point. You cited the 40% background check. That's a bunk number. That is a completely false number. You're citing a study done on 250 people back before the Brady Act, during the Clinton administration.
Dana, stop talking for a moment.
Just wanted to correct that.
We'll come to that after the break, but on that particular point, I know the difference technically between the M16 and the AR-15 completely. My brother uses the M16 in the army. The point is the difference in the carnage they can cause in 1 minute in a school. I don't see much difference, and that's why I'm bemused that you believe one is entitled under your rights, but the other you're perfectly happy not to be entitled under your rights. Let's take a break. Let's come back and discuss this further, because it is a lively debate. Back now with Dana Loesch, host of The Dana Show, and Charles Blow, New York Times columnist and CNN contributor. Dana, let me ask you, I asked you this before, and you said nothing, but now you've had time to think about this. What would you personally do and authorize Washington's politicians to do to curb gun violence in America?
To curb gun violence in America, stop disarming law-abiding citizens. That's the first thing I would do.
Other than not removing any guns, what would you do to stop the fact that 18,000 Americans kill themselves with guns every year, 12,000 murder with guns every year, and 100,000
And Piers, that's a fraction. That's a fraction of people who have firearms, and you can't you can't just dump law-abiding gun owners in with criminals. I think that's really offensive to a lot of Americans,
Dana,
especially when you consider 2.7 million firearms sold December of 2012.
What would you do? What would you personally do and authorize politicians to do to reduce gun violence?
To reduce gun violence, like I said, first and foremost, I would stop regulations that seek to disarm law-abiding citizens. I would also, in addition to that, that's actually one of the most important things you can do, because concealed carry, first off, whenever concealed carry is implemented, like for instance Florida or
okay, but Dana, other than keeping guns,
that's a huge thing,
Dana,
Piers. Why you
Dana,
need to know
other than keeping guns in people's hands, I've got your point on that. What would you proactively do to reduce gun violence?
Tougher penalties for criminals who kill people with illegally obtained firearms.
Okay, Charles Blow, this is my problem, you see, with this debate. Is it the president came up with all these... I'm asking Charles. The president came out with all these plans and all these initiatives, but many Republicans and many gun rights people simply don't agree with any of them. They don't even think there should be background checks.
Right, and first of all, we should make clear that none of those suggestions or proposals were to disarm any law-abiding gun owners. None of them. The government has not said that they want to do that and is not doing that. The second thing is that the NRA is basically a no-regulation organization. They don't want any new regulations of any sort. And none of the gun, I don't call them gun rights groups, I call them gun proliferation groups, because that is the business that they're in, is to make sure that there are more guns produced, sold, and in public hands. And I think that pushing in that direction is actually the wrong direction for us to go, because they will there will be people, most people who buy a gun will use it responsibly. But the more guns that are out there, the more likely guns will be able to fall into the hands of criminals, and that becomes the problem.
Okay, well, the debate will carry on. I'm sure that I'll have you both back very soon. Dana Loesch and Charles Blow, thank you both very much, and we'll be right back after the break.